So, distinguished participants and guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to be among so many distinguished guests today at the Economist Sustainability Summit for the first time for me. Systemic challenges escalating for decades are not favored by the crisis, and thus the multifaceted crises of recent years have undeniably exacerbated global inequalities, amplified existing disparities, and created new challenges that disproportionately affect vulnerable groups. These crises, including the COVID-19 pandemic, economic downturns, climate change, geopolitical tensions, have interacted in complex ways to deepen the fault lines of inequality. Ladies and gentlemen, with a view to reducing inequality, Greece adopts policies and measures to enhance the capacity of its social state to promote social inclusion, despite dealing with serious challenges. As regards disability, a chronic lack of policies on independent living, employability, and early childhood intervention is now being addressed, aiming to solve accessibility and infrastructure problems for the physically impaired, to avoid institutionalization, delays in service delivery, bureaucracy and complex procedures, to shape attitudes, to overcome stereotypes and barriers towards inclusiveness, and to advance independent living. The National Deinstitutionalization Strategy and the Action Plan for its implementation describe the social welfare reforms that aim in particular at promoting and developing a social, legal, and economic framework which also addresses the needs of children with disabilities. A top priority for Greece and the Greek government is child protection and development. Today, I remind to all of you, it's the International Day on the Protection of Rights of Children. So, long-standing disparities in quality and quantity of nursery care services, belated diagnosis of learning disorders, and a heavy and obsolete institutional care have until recently been unfavorable to children's rights and prospects. The implementation and coordination of the National Plan for the European Child Guarantee Scheme will lead the effort to successfully deal with the above issues, ensuring respect for children's rights and focusing on serving the children's best interests. Additionally, the Strategy for Social Inclusion and the Fight Against Poverty, the National Plan for Protection of Children's Rights, are commitments to reduce children poverty, to guarantee that every child has access to free health services, education, childcare, housing, and adequate food, to apply guardianship to unaccompanied minor refugees, to simplify adoption procedures, to ensure independent living and avoid institutionalization for people with disabilities, to provide, or children with disabilities, to provide a safety net against deep poverty by the constitutionally guaranteed social solidarity income, and to provide decent housing for young people, for young families, children, and the elderly. Pursuing the goal 16, Greece has launched a wide range of initiatives. Over the last 4 years, from policies to action plans, innovative methods and tools in order to address key challenges in crucial areas. In the area of human rights, the sufficient protection of children constitutes one of the most persisting challenges for Greece, and a comprehensive plan for their well-being should lead the effort to combat children's rights violations, frequent institutionalization, and exposure to risk. Aiming to address this issue of children protection, the Ministry of Social Cohesion and Family was established following the national elections of June 2023, bringing in one location policies shared among several ministries in the past. The newly formed ministry is set to revisit and restructure the legal framework regarding fostering and adoption, making the relevant procedures faster and the system more efficient, hopefully. At the same time, the ministry has launched a working group, a horizontal working group on combating children and adolescent violence and delinquency, with participants from all relevant ministries, with the aim to create a unified national strategy on the matter. Regarding the relatively low diversity awareness, Greece is seeking to promote diversity within organizations and to eliminate gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation inequalities, especially also in the job market. Dear guests, one key trend of a world that is changing in fundamental ways is the gradual and largely irreversible shift towards an older population, already underway in most countries and especially in Europe. Europe is witnessing this aging population, a phenomenon with far-reaching consequences that extend beyond the individual level to impact the very foundations of our societies. Income inequalities in Europe is sensitive to population aging since the elderly face high poverty risks and represent a growing share of the population. As pension systems come under increased strain, meeting the Europe 2030 poverty targets will partly hinge on sustainable pensions. At the same time, families are changing, and new family structures may pose particular challenges to child upbringing and the provision of support, including to the elderly. According to the most recent data, we are all aware that the number of persons aged 65 years or older worldwide is expected to double over the next 3 decades, reaching 1.6 billion in 2050. The shift in the population age structure brings into question current arrangements of old age support in countries. At the heart of the mission of the newly established Ministry of Social Cohesion and Family lies a special focus on demographic policy. It is an undeniable fact that Greek families now have fewer children, and the Greek population is shrinking and aging. The Ministry of Social Cohesion and Family is tasked with addressing the demographic problem, promoting policies to enhance fertility, support families, and increase female participation in the labor market. To that end, our ministry is set to launch a national plan for demography in early 2024. We are currently drafting the plan, and we will soon start the consultation with all the relevant stakeholders, as announced by the Prime Minister and the Ministers, Mrs. Sofia Zaharaki, reflecting the will of the Greek government for a unified and effective national strategy to combat demographic decline. At the same time, it is understood that in order to increase the birth rate, a more favorable environment for having children must be created with more incentives and a work and social environment that supports family. To achieve this, our ministry strives to combine allowance policies with measures for substantive gender equality and reconciliation of personal and family life and professional activity, ultimately improving the daily life of all family members. Concluding, I wish to underline the commitment of the Greek government to the fight against inequalities. Attributing particular importance to the protection and support of the vulnerable groups, children and the elderly amongst them, the government over the past 4 years has endorsed a number of national action plans and strategies that mainstream the principle of leaving no one behind in public policies and reform measures. For the first time, national action plans for youth, children's rights, child protection, against sexual abuse, the rights of people with disability, and those of LGBTQI+ were launched, along with updated strategies for gender equality and Roma. At international and regional levels, the country continues to play an instrumental role in promoting initiatives supporting the effective implementation of the 2030 Agenda through the establishment of partnership schemes, the adoption of comprehensive legal and policy tools, and the launch of cooperative initiatives. It is evident that governments are key players in creating more equitable societies, protecting the most vulnerable from the negative effects of these trends, and ensuring that the benefits as well as adoption costs are broadly and equitably shared. But in our increasingly interconnected world, the decisions of other countries can constrain national policymaking. Together, We must challenge the status quo and take action to tackle deep-seated as well as emerging inequalities once and for all. Thank you very much.